Classic Edition, AMPC. Mark 5. They came to the other side of the sea, to the region of Gerasenes. And as soon as he got out of the boat, there met him out of the tombs a man under the power of the unclean spirit. This man continually lived amongst the tombs, and no one could subdue him any more, even in the chain. For he had bound often the shackles for the feet and handcuffs, but the handcuffs of light chains he wrenched apart, and the shackles he rubbed and ground together and broke in pieces. And no one had strength enough to restrain or tame him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains he was always shrieking and screaming and beating and bruising and cutting himself with stones. And when from a distance he saw Jesus, he ran and fell on his knees before him in homage. And crying out with a loud voice, he said, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High? What is in common between us? I solemnly implore you, by God, do not begin to torment me." For Jesus was commanding, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." And he asked him, "What is your name?" He replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." And he kept begging him urgently not to send them himself and 4 other demons away out of the region. Now a great herd of hogs was grazing there on the hillside, and the demons begged him, saying, "Send us to the hogs, that we may go into him." And he gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out of the man, and he entered into the hogs, and the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushed headlong down the steep slope into the sea and were drowned in the sea. The hog feeders ran away and told it in the town and in the country, and the people came to see me what it was and had taken place. And they came to Jesus and looked intently and searchingly at the man who had been a demonic sitting there, clothed and in his right mind. The same man who had the legion of demons, and they were seized with alarm and struck with fear. And those who had seen it related in full what had happened to the man possessed by demons and to the hogs. And they began to beg Jesus to leave their neighborhood. And when he had stepped into the boat, the man who had controlled by the unclean spirits kept begging him that he might be with him. But Jesus refused to permit him, but said to him, "Go home to your own family and relatives and friends, and bring back word to them of how much the Lord has done for you, and how he has had sympathy for you and mercy for you." And he departed and began to publicly proclaim in Decapolis, in the region of the 10 cities, how much Jesus had done for him. And all the people were astonished and marveled. And when Jesus had recrossed in the boat to the other side, he got a great throng gathered about him, and he was there at the lake shore. And one of the rulers of the synagogue came up, Jairus by name, and seeing him, he prostrated himself at his feet and began him earnestly saying, "My little daughter is in the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her, so that she may be healed and live." And Jesus went with him, and a great crowd kept following him and pressed him from all sides, so as almost to suffocate him. And there was a woman who had a flow of blood for 12 years, and who had endured much suffering under the hands of many physicians, and had spent all she had, and was no better, but instead grew worse. And she heard the reports concerning Jesus, and she came up behind him in the throng and touched his garment. And she kept on saying, "If only touch his garments, I shall be restored to health." And immediately her flow of blood was dried up at the source, and suddenly she felt in her body that she was healed in distressing ailment. And Jesus, recognizing himself the power proceeding from him, had gone forth, turned around, and immediately in the crowd, and said, "Who touched my clothes?" And the disciples kept saying to him, "You see the crowd pressing hard around you from all sides, and you ask who touched me. Still, she kept looking around to see her who had done it, but the woman, knowingly what had been done for her, though alarmed and frightened and trembled, fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, Daughter, your faith, your trust, your confidence in me, springing from faith in God, has restored you to health. Go into health, peace, and be continually healed and freed from your distressing bodily disease. While he was still speaking, there came some from the ruler's house, who said to Jairus, The daughter has died. Why bother and distress the teacher any further? Overhearing and ignoring what they said, Jesus said to the ruler of the synagogue, Do not be seized with alarm and struck with fear. Only keep on believing. And he permitted no one to accompany him except Peter and James and John and the brother James. And when they arrived to the house, the ruler of the synagogue, he looked carefully and with understanding at the tumult of the people weeping and wailing loudly. And when he had gone in, he said to them, Why do you make an uproar and weep? The little girl is not dead, but is sleeping. And they laughed and jeered at him, but he put them all out, and taking the child's father and mother and those who were with him, he went to the little girl who was lying. Gripping her firmly by the hand, he said to her, Talitha Cumi, which translated is little girl, I say to you, arise from the sleep of death. And instantly the girl got up and started walking around, and she was 12 years old, and they were utterly astonished and overcome by it with amazement. And he strictly commanded and warned them that no one should know this, and he expressly told them to give her something to eat.